But we spoke about last night's election debate where, who knows, it might turn out to be a super spreader event. We've had it here on Sky News. I hope you saw it. What the reaction to it, though, shows about the sickness of our culture. That is really disturbing me, and the sickness of parts of the media left. Now, last night, after the debate, here we had a little forum on Sky News. I said Albanese had to win in that debate overall. He didn't fall flat in his face after a terrible first week. And Albanese, I thought, sounded warm. He sounded compassionate. While the Prime Minister, he was full of statistics. Albanese talked more about the future. Scott Morrison, more about his past. So I really gave it to Albanese. But I also said, I did say there was one exchange in that debate that could, though, be the gotcha that hurt Anthony Albanese. It was the bit from the debate that was easy to run in the media and I thought would run in the media, but gee, it turns out I was wrong. Now, I thought that bit that would have had and should have had the most attention was when, for the third time, not the first time, not the second time, but the third time in this election campaign, Anthony Albanese couldn't remember the most basic thing about his own border policies, what they are and what they were. Now, already in this campaign, Albanese had falsely suggested that he didn't back offshore detention. Then he falsely claimed that Labor did back temporary protection visas. It's like, what's my policy? Is it the one that I had before? Is it the one I have now? I can understand his confusion. But last night, even more amazing, this is the most amazing of the three, came this. Albanese unbelievably claiming that the Rudd government, when he was Deputy Prime Minister even, that the Rudd government never opposed turning back boats of illegal immigrants.
You haven't always been.
I was the Deputy Prime Minister when we established offshore processing. I was the Deputy Prime Minister when that happened. And what we've said is we have the same position on offshore processing, on settlement in third countries, and the same position on boat turnbacks. But what we also now have the same position on...
You didn't have the same position on turnbacks.
Now what...
This just floors me. Was Anthony Albanese asleep back then? Because turning back the boats was the first and the biggest promise of the Liberals under Tony Abbott. And it was a plan that the Labor government, featuring Deputy Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, hysterically claimed could lead to war with Indonesia and must be rejected. And Albanese remembers none of that? Listen, I'm not sure that boat policy is a huge issue right now because boats aren't arriving, so maybe it's not even front of mind for most people. But I must point out, by the way, that the Labor for Refugees group is already urging Labor to be softer to their 15,000 boat people it says are still on Indonesia waiting to come to Australia. No, even so, for me, the big issue in this is how could Albanese, the leader of the Labor Party, be so amazingly forgetful, so ignorant of his own policy here? And a policy that cost them government last time. It is just so bizarre. Anyway, that's what I thought was a big gotcha moment last night. But little did I know what Labor and the media left, the ABC especially, what they would seize on instead from the debate. And it was this. And if you haven't seen it before, you try to figure out why this has turned into an attack on Scott Morrison. Here he is answering a question from a woman with an autistic son.
I have a 4-year-old autistic son. We are grateful to receive funds through the NDIS. I've been told to give my son the best future I should vote Labor.
Jenny and I have been blessed. We've got 2 children that haven't had to go through that. And so for parents with children who are disabled, I can only try and understand.
Well, here we go. You know what Morrison meant. I know what Morrison meant. But we now have a toxic culture where people look to take offence and take that offence where clearly none was meant, and then use that offence as a political weapon. So off Labor went, with two of Labor's so-called mean girls teeing off on Morrison, including Katie Gallagher, mother of an autistic child.
I have a child with autism and I feel blessed to have her, and I thought the Prime Minister's comments were insensitive and offending to those of us who have our lives enriched by children with autism and with other disabilities. So, you know, I can only explain it like that, you know, politician/mother and having a kid, that she's amazing, you know, and to hear a Prime Minister say that they were blessed not to have one, you know, hits you.
I think every child is a blessing for parents.
Notice a little twist. Now you're blessed not to have the child. I mean, really. Now, naturally, the ABC, the national broadcaster, actually campaigning for Labor, grabbed this stick and happily belted Morrison again and again. Here's just one example. Patricia Karvelis, of course, on the ABC's Radio National.
The word has been incredibly offensive to some people. Will he apologise for using it? Okay, but shouldn't he apologise for the use of that word? Because it was pretty hurtful and jarring. But on this issue, and I'm raising it because it's been overwhelmingly offensive to so many people.
She asked more questions about that than anything else from the debate. Can you believe it? I am so sick of people attacking others for how they supposedly seem rather than for what we all know they actually are. Does anyone who is sane seriously think that Morrison has no compassion for children with a disability? And has no parent ever said quietly, "Thank God our child is healthy"? But the Prime Minister had to, of course, humble himself to the mob.
I meant no offence by what I said last night, but I accept that it has caused offence to people, and Dylan and I have been in contact today, and I apologise directly to Dylan about that. I think people would also appreciate that I would have had no such intention of suggesting that anything other than every child is a blessing is true. Every single child is precious.
What a circus. And this was really the big takeout from last night's debate?